Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Ashley, and today I'm going to show you how to make Southwestern dangling woven beaded earrings. Here's one, and we're going to make the match. If you know anything about me, you know I love working with seed beads. I love stitching them together, weaving them, whatever I can do with seed beads, it's always fun. And I got inspiration to make these earrings because I really love mixing materials. So here we have a little bit of brass wire, and then we're also using beads to create these really fun, modern take on a Southwestern earring design. Let's go ahead and go over our supplies and tools. We're going to need a little thread snipper. Now, if you have a blade, like an X-Acto knife, that'll work as well, but I love these little snippers for making sure the thread we're using today is super tight next to the beads. We also have flush cutters for your wire, have a bench block and pad, have a hammer for your wire. We have Nymo beading thread, this is size 10. We also have a beading needle, especially for bead weaving. We have a little bit of brass here for that little piece you saw. And then we have 3 different colors of seed beads. You can use as many as you like, but I chose 3 for this activity. Last but not least, Scotch tape wrapped inside out around my finger so I can stick the beads to it and easily just pick them up as I go to create these earrings. Now I'm gonna move this pad out of the way just during the portion where I hammer the brass wire, because when you hammer, if you have your beads laid out, they might kind of pop all over the place. So I'm just gonna move this out of the way for a moment. And I'm going to grab my hammer, my brass, my bench block, and I'm actually gonna grab this earring so I can measure and see how wide that brass is. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this wire with my flush cutter to make sure it's the same width, just about, as this one on the other earring. So I'm flush cutting one side, and then I'm holding it up, and it looks like I need to do a little bit more. So let's see. Now here, I'm going to hammer it flat, not super flat, but just to give it a little bit of shape, I think. Okay, cool. Now I'm gonna take this part of my hammer and just make little paddles on the ends. So hold that. And as I'm hammering, I'm almost creating a motion where I'm kind of pulling and pushing at the sides, kind of, so I'll show you in slow-mo here. Like I'm doing that. Like I come down and kind of pull at it or push at it, because I want that metal to kind of come out into a paddle shape. Let's see, just a little more. Cool. Now I'm going to do the other side. Okay, looks like I'm ready to put this to the side and we can go ahead and get started with our bead work. Now I'm going to pull out a length of Nymo thread that's about, let's say about 18 inches. You don't want it too long because it will tangle as you work with it. Now, we're going to run out for sure. This isn't enough for the entire earring, but we can always add more, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So I'm taking my little thread cutters and I'm just snipping, get a nice easy end there. And I want to go ahead and snip the other end too because it looks a little scraggly. All right, I take my needle, and the best way to get this thread through the eye of the needle is to pinch it down almost to where you can't see it. And then you lay the eye of the beading needle right on top, and then as you open your fingers, you kind of push it through. That really helps with stringing it. Okay, you pull it through, not all the way, but just to have a little tail. And then I'm going to add an anchor bead at the other end. Oop, looks like I frayed this little string. I'm actually gonna cut a different length because I don't want it to break while I'm working with it. There we go. I love Nymo thread because it's really flexible. If I'm creating something like a woven bracelet, I use Fireline because I want it to be like a little bit stiff, and typically I'm not going to reweave all the way through the bracelet. But with something like a hand beaded, especially like peyote stitch, brick stitch, using Nymo thread is really nice because with those kinds of techniques, you often find yourself weaving all throughout the beaded piece. And if you're using something like Fireline, it can become stiff and almost impossible to get back through the beads when you're weaving through multiple times. With the Nymo, it's much thinner and more flexible. So I use both, but for this particular activity where I'm creating a triangle shape and weaving in and out of those beads, I really need something a bit more pliable. So I'm putting that through the eye of the needle, okay? And then I always add what we beaders call an anchor bead. So I'm going to choose one that's a different color than the first beads I'm working with. So I'm going to choose this mustard color, and I'm going to add it to the end of my string. And I'm just going to tie a single knot around it. I want this to be really easy to take out later. So I'm tying a super simple knot. So simple, it's almost not a knot. So there you go. It's about 4 inches from the end. And now I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to put some of these red beads on my tape so it's much easier to get to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add, let's see, I can put them to the side a little bit, 8 beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then, because the first thing we do is we create this middle portion. We create that middle line, and then we work out to each side from there. So I have 8 beads. Now I'm going to add 1 more bead. And this one is going to lay right on top of that one. So we're not going to go back through this bead. We're going to kind of skip over it, lay the bead on top, and then go into the next one. So I'm literally going into the next bead. I'm holding everything taut, kind of tight there, pinched between my fingers, because I don't want the beads to get all willy-nilly. I want it to be a nice tight line. And then I look at it and I see that looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and add another bead. Here we go. And then I'm going to skip. The thing about this first row is you can't possibly go into each bead. So what you do is, see where the thread is sitting on top of this bead? That means I'm going to sit another bead right there. So I skip this bead and I go into the next one, just the way I did at the very first one. Get my needle in there. It's kind of, the hole's hiding from me. Okay. Now I'm going to take a look at my work. It looks kind of wonky. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take this opportunity to tighten everything up, because it's how you begin your piece that defines the way the rest of the piece goes. And if it's all willy-nilly now, it'll be willy-nilly forever. So I take this first bead, this corner bead, and I kind of pinch it with my, almost like with my finger or my fingernail, and I kind of take this opportunity to just pull this tight, really pull it as tight as I can without breaking it. And I want everything to be kind of locked into place, so to speak. So I tighten everything up, and then just a note, this sort of helps guide you as you go. So once you create these foundation rows, you see how these are creating this staggered look. It'll be pretty obvious where the beads go from here forward. So let's go ahead and grab another bead. Whoops, here they are. And I skip, and I go into the next one. Now, these are small beads. It is sometimes more difficult to see smaller beads. That's why you see a lot of beaders using magnifiers. That's why a lot of us use magnifiers. We use lights that have magnification on them. We use just plain old, magnifying like headpieces, kind of headgear sort of things. So if this feels like it looks a little too tiny, just get a magnifier and it will be easy peasy, promise. Okay, I go into this next one doing the exact same thing, skipping. So now that I've gotten to the end of this row, things are looking a little wonky. I'm just gonna make sure I have everything kind of tightened up, but it's all where it's supposed to be. And it'll start to kind of take shape too as we go. This is just the first 2 rows, but I just give it a little tug. There we go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start on the next row. So this will be basically row 3, and at the end of row 3 is when we create this little piece at the very top where our ear wire hangs. So let's go ahead and grab another bead. And you can kind of see here exactly where it goes now. See, really the only place for it to go is right here. So I go into this bead with the needle. Okay, and I keep doing that until I get to the top. And now it's much more obvious where to go. You see how the beads are kind of taking shape and creating what looks like a brick wall or something like that. So the beads are really creating a nice kind of flush line. There we go. I'll do one more. And then what I've done here is I've just strung 3 beads onto the string and I loop it over the top, and that creates the loop for the ear wire. So here I'll add 3 beads. And this is the only time you add more than 1 bead, this whole activity. So if you ever find yourself stringing on more than 1 bead outside of this moment, go ahead and take the extras off. We just work with 1 at a time. And then I'm stringing it right into this next bead. So the thing about brick stitch or peyote stitch, once you get into it, you're going to learn that it kind of tells you where you can go. Go ahead and pull that, add a bead, okay, get it in, add another one. And we're starting to create our triangle shape here. So I'm just gonna look at this and see, make sure everything looks right. Yep, there's 2 beads right underneath. So now you can start to see this kind of creates the top of our triangle and it's starting to go down. So if I were to add another bead right here, that would continue to create that rectangle shape. It would continue to make it grow out the same exact way on each side. We want to start limiting the number of beads we add because we want to create a triangle, not a rectangle. So instead of adding a bead right here, I'm going to actually push it through the next one. And then I'm going to thread this through all of these 3 beads at the top that create that loop. So earlier I was talking to you about the flexibility, the pliability of NYMO thread. This is the part where it really becomes important because I'm going to thread through these beads several times throughout the activity. Okay, so continuing on that same path. Whoops, my little thread got stuck around my finger. Okay. Going back through here, and now back to adding beads to create that triangle shape. So now we're back to that part where I have a little bead to add right there because I have a little valley. So I'm going to add one of my little seed beads, add it here, and okay, and you can start to see these indentations in my finger. That's because I'm really gripping these beads as I pull the thread tight. I want to make sure everything is staying taut. And now once again, we're up here toward the top of the triangle, so we are going to thread through it. And doing this also kind of helps everything just like stay in a nice line. Go through the top. Go around to the other side. Through all of those, the edge of that triangle. and then I see that I have a bead to add right there. So I grab another bead. And now remember on the other side how we had to kind of add a bead on the flip side? So what I'm gonna do, I see that I kind of need one from the previous row, so I'm just gonna go right through this one instead of going on top of it, because I wanna make sure to fill in that hole. Oops, get on over there. Okay, and I grab a bead, and I go through there. See how it looks a little funky? That's because on there's always one side where you have to kind of add them in an odd way. So now when we go back around, we'll end up adding one for this row and then one down to kind of compensate from the previous row. So pulling that tight so we get everything kind of nice and tight there. Gonna add some more beads to my little tape. Super handy. And now I take one, add it there. Okay, so now we're getting to the point where we've gone through these beads quite a few times, and we really only have a couple more on each side. So instead of going through the top of this, I'm going to start weaving across. So I'm right here coming out of this bead, so I'm going to weave across into the one next to it. And I'm going to, now it's an over, under motion. So now I'm going up through. The point is that we don't really want the cord to show. So we want to do it in a way where it just kind of hides itself in between those beads. Now, if I were to go just all across and pick random beads, you'd have string laying across your piece and showing. We don't want that. That's why I'm just doing this over, under with the beads right next to each other. So now, when I come back up here, I can go back down through this bead, taking us to that little valley where we need to add another bead. There we go. Add that there. And then we only need one more on this side. Perfect. Just to make the corner. And we'll be done with this side, and we'll hop on over to the other side. Finish up, we'll attach this baby to the brass bar and add our dangles. The dangles are super easy, by the way. Once you get through this part, you're gonna be so happy, and you're gonna be ready to add the dangles. Make your southwestern earring. So you see that? Oops. Maybe if it was not swinging to and fro, you could see it. Okay, cool. So you see how it was kind of curving up a little bit, so I'm kind of just like tugging at it a tiny bit. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna just go up through that bead, and I'm gonna do the same thing I just did and go to the other side. And now I notice that if I go ahead and go down through this bead, I don't really end up where I need to be. So I'm actually gonna go up one row above, because there are fewer beads on that row. And I'm gonna go over into that bead, and then there you go. So now I'm gonna add a bead into that little valley there. And we only need one more bead, and we're ready to add our little brass bar. Okay, so I'll put one here. Putting it through. And now I'm ready to weave in my ends and start adding the dangles. So I've done it before where I kind of leave these ends just hanging, and then I add more thread to start adding the dangles and wrapping around the brass bar. But it starts to be a lot to deal with. So I'm gonna show you now how to go ahead and weave in your ends. And you can actually decide if you want to. You could stop here, add an ear wire, and make this your earring, or you can add your dangles. So what I do to weave in is basically exactly what I just showed you, where I'm weaving kind of in through the piece. And then I'm going to do that with both of these ends, these little tails, and then I'm going to tie them together when they meet. So I'm going to come up a row here. This makes sure too to kind of like suck everything in. So all the little beads that are starting to maybe wanting to go their own way, kind of help suck them in. So I go over and under. Over and under. And as long as you're sticking to beads that are right nearby, see, I can actually go a little bit diagonal up. Oops, stuck to my little tape. There we go. Okay, go diagonal up again. Kind of push that over the corner there. And then I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna go up one more time. Bring it around the corner, whoopsies. So now I'm going back down and I'm gonna stop right here because now I'm facing down. I want these to meet. So now I'm gonna take off my little anchor bead. I take the butt of the needle and I stick it in the seed bead and I just literally boop, 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 leverage it off like that. Now I put this end back through the eye of the needle, just like we did it at the very beginning, pushing it through. And now I'm going to go up. And I want to meet that other cord. So I'm just going to kind of go up, up, up through these beads until they meet. So now this one's a little bit curvy, and that's okay because when we wrap this around the brass bar, it's gonna kind of pull everything taut. See, even now using my fingers, I can kind of pull on it a little bit to make it not as curvy. So I'm gonna grab my bar and then I'm gonna grab some more of my Nymo thread. Let's see if I can find the end. There we go. Pull it out. You can pull out a little bit more this time because we're not really weaving and sewing in the same way we have been. It's a little bit more difficult to get it knotted up, but I would still keep it relatively short, no longer than 2 feet. I'm gonna do the same thing, but I don't need an anchor bead this time. Threading my needle. I'm going to, actually, I'm gonna add an anchor bead just because, you don't have to, but it will make it a little bit easier to keep this in place just for the purposes of our demo here. So let me add an anchor bead. And I'll just do that single knot that's super easy to come undone. Now I'm going to go from top to bottom through that bead. And I'm going to give it a little wrap around my brass, a full wrap, and now I'm going to add my beads. So you see here I've created this little pattern. I'm going to take this off so I can really see it. Okay. So I have 3 of the sort of reddish color beads, and then 1 of the pink, 2 of the red, 2 of the pink, 1 of the red. Is that right? 3, 2, 1. And then 2 pink and a yellow. And a yellow. And a pink. And a red. And a pink and 3 yellow. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hold it up and make sure that looks right. Looks right, perfect. So I'm going to pull that on. And the next step is to go through, oh no, my little thing came undone. That's okay, we can come back to it. let's go ahead and do this part. We'll kind of skip this bottom bead and come up through all of the beads. All right. That one got a little stuck, that's okay. Just kind of hold on to it. I'm leaving just a little bit of slack here at the top so we can add our little bar back. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this around. And then I'm going to go back up through that first bead. Looks kind of funky, but once we do this a few times, you'll see exactly what's going on. All right, and then, yay, it's begun. Now we're gonna go over through that, down through that next one. Pull it tight. So now you have your first dangle. You can kind of see how that's working. Okay, and I'm going to wrap it around the bar. And then I'm going to add the exact same bead pattern, but I'm going to add one more yellow at the very bottom to make it just a little bit longer. So I'm doing 3. I'm actually going to just kind of work from over here now. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 2. Pinks, 1 red, 2 pinks, a yellow, a pink, a red, a pink, and I did 3 yellow the first time, so I'm going to do 4 yellow this time because I want it to be like a diagonal shape. Okay, so I'm going to let these all go. I'm kind of holding this in place where I wrapped my cord. There you go. And I'm going to come over that first bead, go back up through all the others, go, pinching it, and then pulling it through. And now, it's kind of near, I kind of pull on it just a little bit, make sure everything's kind of tight. I can pinch this bottom bead and make sure everything's kind of pushed up, and then tighten it again. There we go. So now I'm gonna go back up through that same bead I just came through. Okay. And then down. Wrap the cord around the bar, and then add my beads. And I keep making it so that each time, each little dangle has an additional yellow bead to keep up that shape. So I'm just gonna go for it now, and you can just bead along with me, and then when we get to the end, I'll show you how to weave these ends in again. Okay, so here I'm starting to run out of my cord, which is totally fine. We're just gonna come up through that same bead like we normally would, and then we are gonna do that little weave-in process like we did earlier. So I'm just gonna weave this into the beads, making sure that I do it in a way where I'm either going side to side or diagonal, so that way my cord doesn't show. Okay, and the point is I want these 2 cords to meet each other. Okay, there we go. They are now right where they need to be for a really nice knot. Snip, and then we can add the last 2 dangles and make our ear wire, and then wear our beautiful earrings. Okay, so tie a shoe, or tie your shoe knot, just a double knot. All right. Okay. Snip the ends. And then going to take some more of that Nymo cord. Don't need a ton, I just have 2 more dangles. Snip it. And we're so close, folks. We're almost there. Okay, re-thread it. I'm gonna add another anchor bead just for fun so everything stays in place. Okay. There we go. And then I'm going to come down through this bead. Do the same thing I did before, the exact same thing, just double wrap, and then start threading on my beads. So I do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, so we finished our last dangle. I'm going to take this needle and weave back up through until I get to around the middle. One thing I do want to do is I want to just do one more time right here around these beads just to make sure everything's really nice and strong for that ear wire. So I'm going to come back up through this, through all my little beads on the side. Get that needle to come out there. Okay. There we go. Go. It's getting kind of looped around there. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to go up through this bead one more time. Just that one. And then down across. Okay. Now I'm ready to add my ear wire, which I'm super excited about. So if you already have an ear wire handy, that's awesome. Just attach it like you normally would. I'm actually gonna go ahead and make an ear wire. So I'm gonna grab some 20 gauge wire. Just grab that real quick. Okay. There we go. Snip it. I'm going to take my round nose plier, grip it right around, maybe a quarter of the way up the shaft there. Wrap it around until it meets, and then I bring it around, and I'm going to grip it right at that spot where the wires kind of touch, and then make a 90-degree angle. So I just bend it kind of against that round nose plier again. So that's what you end up with. And then I'm going to take my bail shaping plier, and I'm actually going to hold these up so I see exactly where I bent it. All right, perfect. So you see that? They're kind of lined up. And then I'm going to bend it over. Oops, there we go. Come on, baby. Okay. And then I'm going to shape it. So now, this one is really not going in the direction I want, so that's fine. I'm just going to take my plier, and you can use a flat nose plier for this, or it's fine to use this. Just going to kind of put it into shape, into place. There we go. Go ahead and grab this flat nose plier. There we go. And so I kind of want it to match this other one. And the other one, I made a little bit of a curve. You can see it's nice and curvy. So I'm just gonna kind of even use my nail there or a tool to just create a little curve at the bottom, and then I can clip it. So now I simply open my loop, and I want to make sure these are going in the right direction here. I want them to face each other. Here we go. I'm going to loop it on. Get it right in there. There we go. Perfect. And ta-da, you have a match. You now have beaded, woven, Southwestern inspired earrings ready to wear. Now that we've made our Southwestern beaded woven earrings, let's take another look at the tools we need. I added a couple more this time just because I decided to make my own ear wires. So let me show you those first. I added this bail shaping plier. This is a wubber. I added round nose pliers and flat nose plier, as well as some 20 gauge wire to create our ear wires. The original tools we talked about were this wire hammer, chasing hammer, bench block and pad. We also used a thread snipper to get really close between those beads, a flush cutter, and we used a beading needle made especially for this kind of work, Nymo beading thread, and I used 3 different colors of 11-0 seed beads. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to pick up tools and supplies like the ones we used today, go ahead and check out the description below where you can find all the links. While you're down there, leave us a comment and let us know what colors you would create your Southwestern earrings out of. And before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you can be notified every time we publish a new video.